A mangrove swamp is not what you'd expect to see in the heart of one of the busiest, most developed tourist areas in the Caribbean, Barbados' south coast. It's what the locals call Graeme Swamp. Environmentalists both inside and outside Barbados recognize it as one of the last significant wildlife habitats in the country, a major roosting area for dozens of native and migratory bird species. A wealthy Canadian philanthropist called Peter Allard and others have spent about $35 million US over the last 20 years to protect the wetland, creating the Graeme Nature Sanctuary. It was carefully constructed with lots of volunteer labor and local support to provide educational and research opportunities for Bajans and visitors while protecting the environment. But despite international recognition by the UN's Convention on Wetlands of International Importance, the sanctuary's future is uncertain, many say threatened. Like many fragile ecosystems, the health of the swamp depends on how adjacent land around the sanctuary is used. For their part, Peter Allard and others have been pushing for a roughly 240-acre national park that would prevent any further development. Successive governments have so far refused. Instead, the land has been zoned for further development. There have been plans for a waterslide park, golf courses, fancy hotels, and tourist accommodations. Only public outcries have prevented these projects from going ahead. And there's one more threat to the sanctuary: this rotten, broken-down sluice gate. It doesn't look like much, but it's the critical link between the salt water in the ocean and the fresh water in the swamp. It's the combination of the two that makes mangrove swamps so unique. The vegetation and the wildlife depend on the brackish mix of both. But the old sluice gate and this pile of sand prevent any mixing, and it's been this way almost continuously for a decade. Governments continue to make promises to replace the gate, but so far, nothing has happened. A 2010 study said, without continuous mixing, Graeme will be fed just with freshwater springs, eventually completely changing the ecology and biological makeup of the swamp. As with most environmental fights, there's a bad mix of politics, economics, and personalities at play. There was a long and bitter legal battle heard in courtrooms in 3 countries and partly financed by Peter Allard over who should benefit from the so-called Kingsland Estates, 1,000 acres of prime development land not directly linked to the swamp's watershed, but the legal maneuvers prevented the family who originally owned the land from selling it, and more importantly, it kept some high-ranking politicians from benefiting from the sale. It's led a few to look at Peter Allard as a wealthy bully and outsider trying to push around the Barbadian government. But to many, many others, both within and without Barbados, he's a true conservationist who's put a lot of his own money on the line to preserve something special. Finally, in December of 2008, Allard had had enough. The sanctuary was closed. A small staff continued to care for the wildlife, and the public can continue to use the coffee shop and meeting area. So this is a fight between protecting the environment and what some see as economic opportunities that shouldn't be squandered. It's also an effort to convince people that there is value in simply leaving nature alone. Perhaps one Barbadian summed it up best: only a mature and confident country is prepared to sometimes say no to economic development in order to protect a wilderness area. And Graeme is one of the few remaining wilderness areas left in the country. And if the carefully planned sanctuary gives Bajans and visitors a chance to understand and enjoy this wilderness, even better. From someone who loves Bajans and Barbados, I'm Ian Petrie.